Hey everybody, welcome back. It is a hot day, so hopefully the fan doesn't pick up too much. It didn't look like it was picking up too much on the sound bar, just a little bit, but I have not done anything today. It has been way too hot. Barely have held Purdy. And the sad news is it's not even as hot as it was yesterday, is it? She's not going to look at you all. She's been getting combed today, and she hasn't liked that. We've been we've been doing this. Trying to get all those clumps out. That was just that little bit right there. She can only tolerate it for a little bit, and then I have to stop because then she bites at the comb every time. At any rate, I am sweaty. I've got cat fur all over me. It's finally cool enough, though, that I think I can concentrate long enough to watch some of my reactions. I've watched the movie that made us. Love that episode. If you guys have not seen it, check it out. It's on its second season now. I think it was 4 movies the first time, 4 movies this time, and then it's got a holiday edition with 2 movies. A lot of fascinating facts. We'll just say that. So watch that, watch some YouTube, and now we're going to attempt to do some reactions because tomorrow I'm going to go watch Escape Room 2 and then pick up my watermelon so I can make some watermelon salad. Today we are reacting to the final episode of the Cecil Hotel. However, I'm going to do one more episode after this. It's not an official part of the series, but I'm going to include it in it. And it's an episode from a friend, acquaintance would be the more proper term. We went to high school together. We were acquaintances in high school. But he has become popular in the unsolved case world. And so he's got a series on YouTube, and one of the episodes is about the Cecil Hotel. So there will be one more after this one that I will include, and I'll give you his information and everything in this description below so that you can check it out ahead of time, and we'll kind of go from there. Okay. And then after we get done with this, I'm still trying to decide what I'm going to pick up next. There are some other docuseries I want to do, like Sons of Sam and stuff like that. But with these being quickies, I kind of want to do another season of a regular show and then do a docuseries again because Ratchet will be ending in about another month and a half, something like that, month and a half. And so I'll probably do a docu-series after that one and then a regular show. I've got Dark on the list, Ozark on the list. I'm waiting for season 6 of The Walking Dead, Fear the Walking Dead, to come out on disc so I can get that recorded for you all. I She's very chatty today. We're also I'm thinking of doing Breaking Bad. It's going to be very long though, so I'm not sure where I want to put it in my lineup of things. So we'll have to see. So there's still a lot of shows that I can show and get away with and all that kind of stuff. And as long as I can keep up with things, we'll be doing pretty good. Work, we are short 2 clinicians, and so it's been a little busier than usual at work. We're seeing how I may be adjusting my schedule some more in order to get these done. Let's go ahead and get into this last episode of the official docu-series for the Cecil Hotel. And like I said, I'll include the link for my friend's series down below, so you can check that out ahead of time so that when I post it, you guys will see it. Oh, well, have already have seen it. Um, so at any rate, And just so you know, it's Detective Kenny Maines, or Ken Maines. He goes by Ken. We called him Kenny. But that's, and the name of the channel is Unsolved No More, I believe. So I'll have that down in the description. Let's get into this final episode. Let's find out if they figure out who did this or not. I don't think they ever did figure it out. I don't remember there ever being any resolve to the case, but I could be wrong about that. I haven't, at that time, I wasn't into all these true crime stuff. So they might have solved it and I just don't remember. So let's find out. And this episode is called The Hard Truth. And with it being called The Hard Truth, it makes me wonder if the hard truth is that they'll never know who did it because they hardly have any evidence. So,
The music that I do is called black metal.
oh, that's right.
It's tradition.
I forget who the artist is.
Morbid, it's my stage name.
Okay.
If it's bloody, then it's bloody. And sometimes I take it too far.
I forgot about this guy becoming a suspect among the web sleuths.
And they started writing to him.
You killed Elisa Lamb, didn't you? Fucking murderer.
Just
This is the problem with mob mentality.
Eventually, I received the toxicology results.
Finally.
Given her, but I didn't identify any evidence that she was consuming alcohol and abusing any type of illicit drug.
Okay.
One of the things that you could look for is whether or not she took a large number of pills to try to kill herself, and I didn't find that.
Okay.
However, the levels of the medications were very low. This is
interesting.
interesting.
Below therapeutic levels.
Bipolar disorder is still very stigmatizing for most people, and most people don't really understand it. This means that the person's mood instability has highs and they have lows. They have
extreme highs and extreme lows.
Antidepressants, a mood stabilizer, and an atypical antipsychotic.
An antipsychotic. So did she have bipolar with psychosis?
And of course, once she stops taking the medication, the risks for a mood episode goes way up.
Well, it's something they're not talking about here, that is a common problem for folks who are living with bipolar, is that when they're in their manic stage, they tend not to take their medications because they're feeling good, they're feeling great, they've got all this energy, and they don't want to take these medications that make them feel blah. And so it's really hard to keep them motivated to take their medication when they're entering a manic phase or in that manic phase. So depending on how she was with her diagnosis and her treatment compliance and her medications, how they made her feel, and all that kind of stuff, how long, like how educated was she about herself with her disorder? Did she know that she tends to do these things and therefore she knows that she needs to make especially sure she needs to take her medications, that kind of stuff. Whereas when you're early on in your treatment, you may not recognize those patterns for yourself as easily. And there's a reason why they're not getting into it on this show. It's because it's too complicated. There's a lot to it. There's a lot of variants, and but those are questions I would be asking myself. Was she in a manic phase, and that's why she stopped taking her medication, and was going maybe hallucinating? Because you can have bipolar disorder with psychosis, which means you don't meet the criteria for schizophrenia or schizoaffective disorder or other types of psychosis, but when you're in your phases of the bipolar disorder, you can have psychosis, so the hallucinations and delusions and that sort of thing. That would fit with what we were seeing on the videotape of what seemed like bizarre behavior. She might have been in a psychotic episode. So let's see if that's where they're going.
Those girls had begun to complain about her erratic and odd behavior.
I've never
So
spoken
it sounds
publicly
like she
about
was
this,
going
but
into a psychotic
she was being
episode.
disruptive. The night before she was going to check out, we relocated her to her own dedicated room. That seemed to be a better option for her. And
And they
then
did say
later,
in one of the other
she
episodes that they
proceeds to
moved
go
her.
down.
And when you get onto the rooftop, to get to the tank itself, you would actually have to walk on pipes and squeeze in between the tanks to get to the one that she was in.
So she was on that
And then you
inside
have
corner.
To carry a body up a steep ladder without damaging the body, it's not possible.
But if she was trying to get away from whatever she was telling to go away, she could have been hiding in the tank.
And in review of the scene, we did not find anything suspicious for any criminal reason why she's dead.
Although the question still
So, at
remains,
that
how did
point
she
in
get the
time,
lid
we
back on the
had
tank if she did it
facts.
herself? Unless the lid was already off when the maintenance man went up to look.
I have spent hours and hours investigating this, and I completely disagree with the coroner.
It just doesn't make sense.
The coroner has to
Especially
go with the evidence
LAPD
that they
spent the
have.
whole
Someone put her in it and closed the lid. That would only mean that she was basically murdered here.
So I will say again, was the lid on when the maintenance man went up to check, or did he put it back on after he saw her body, just out of habit? They haven't really clarified that part, in my opinion. And we still have a ways to go.
Homicide. But if it wasn't some type of sexual assault, why would she get naked?
The question, why would she get naked? Well, people do, and I'm not saying this is what happened, just based on my experience of mental health crises that I've dealt with for over 20 years, that people do all sorts of things in a psychotic episode. When I worked in the emergency department, there was a fellow that was brought in by 4 law enforcement officers. He was a regular to the emergency department. However, it was my first time meeting him. It was my first week of doing the emergency room assessments on my own after learning how to do all their processes and everything. So I go in to meet with a guy. I was only going to have one officer in there with me, and they were like, no, you need to have at least 2 officers. And I was like, okay. I trusted what they were saying. So I had both officers come in, 2 of the 4 officers come in with me. He was naked as a jaybird, wouldn't even put a hospital gown on. And I asked him, do you want to at least drape it over your legs or, that kind of thing, because he was sitting on the exam table. And he's like, nope, I'm good. How about you take your clothes off? And I was like, nope, I'm good. So, and he had a psychotic disorder. I can't remember exactly which one it was because that was a long time ago. But he felt comfortable being naked in that state that he was in. Who knows why? I don't know if we ever got a reason why. But the reason why they recommended 2 officers at least in there with him is because he had a history of becoming violent. And so that's why the officers said that. So, but he was, the fellow was good with me. So, nothing ended up happening. We did end up having to commit him and kind of go from there. I think that was the last time we saw him in the emergency department too. I think. No, he came back a couple of more times after that. I just didn't deal with him after that. People do all sorts of things when they're in a psychotic episode. So why did she have her clothes off? She might have been in a psychotic episode. Maybe not, and we'll find out. We still got a long ways to go in this. But that could be an explanation.
Could have been led to the rooftop by gunpoint, forced into the water tank, and left to die. That sounds like foul play to me.
Coroner has to go off the evidence he has.
And accident was marked.
Accidents happen on paperwork all the time. You get into a habit of checking things off sometimes, so I can understand that error.
Accident, but I haven't seen the police files, and that raises questions in itself.
Did they do I forget what it's actually called, but when you request public information, journalists do it all the time.
You killed Elisa Lamb, didn't you?
we hate you, fucking murderer.
And watch, he didn't do it.
I was shocked. The web sleuths, they saw me the way I look, and that's what triggered them.
Mob mentality and
Death,
conspiracy
murder,
theories.
whatever.
And I did call him an artist earlier, although I don't
I wanted
understand
to
that style of
to
art.
start looking because I
But
thought
hey,
I made a
to each
video
their
where I
own.
wear a mask because I was just paranoid. Were
Was a
let go. They
Luce Libre
flagged my account,
mask?
and I actually haven't made any more music. And when I try, it's not the same.
And that's probably the most frustrating thing to me about the mob mentality and conspiracy theory and jumping to judgment and all that kind of stuff. It's one thing to say, hey, have you checked this guy out? Something seems suspicious. And let, the investigators do their thing. And, if they say nothing's there, then nothing's there. But for people to take all of this into their own hands and ruin people's lives, that's not cool either, especially when they haven't done anything. You might not like what he does, but as long as he's not doing anything illegal, you know, it's his right to do what he wants to do. We don't have a right to ruin it just because we have a conspiracy theory that he killed somebody, which he was nowhere around. Now, watch the police say, well, we investigated and we found some fishy stuff. But if the PGR showed up and questioned him about stuff, I'm assuming that LA already did their stuff as well. I that's just a frustrating thing with the internet and social media. That's probably the biggest negative is people jump to conclusions about stuff and don't listen to the facts and form their own opinions based on things that aren't true. I mean, we see it every day right now here in 2021. I had to think of what year it was. In 2021, people jump to conclusions all the time. They've got these conspiracy theories going on. My nephew is part of the conspiracy theory stuff, and I'm constantly having to call him out on it. It's like there's no proof of anything of what you're saying. It's just frustrating. And I wish people would learn it's okay to question things, but you've got to go with the facts. The coroner had to go with the facts. If they don't have ample proof that there was murder, homicide, or suicide, they have to go with accident or undetermined. Most of the time, they go with accident unless they have cause to believe other stuff. The error on the paperwork that happens all the time. Usually, it's the date error in the initials of whoever did the date and error. And I couldn't tell if that was like a W or whatever, the circles up above beside the date. That might have been the initials, but it's supposed to be your initials, the date, and error when you mark something out. And it's supposed to be a single line. It looked like it was more than a single line, but that's all right. That happens all the time too. At least it wasn't whited out. That's a big, big no-no. And the clinical field, you cannot use whiteout on main documents. You have to do the line, error, and date and initials. I don't know. It just happens all the time, and it drives me nuts. And I know I'm going on a rant, and it's time to get back to the show. I don't like what the guy does for a living, but that's no reason to ruin his career. I just don't have to participate in it.
There's some singer in Mexico, but all I can say is that he's not involved.
Okay, so they looked into it.
You really don't have the full story in front of you. You don't have all of the facts.
Exactly.
At least it looked like she had bipolar 1, which means that it's the more severe version of bipolar disorder, in which sometimes psychotic features can be a part of that.
Okay, so that's what I was saying. In bipolar 1 and bipolar 2 is hypomanic, which means they don't go into a full manic phase. They kind of sit right below that mania, hypomanic. So bipolar 1 is what she had with psychosis.
In the past, she would become frightened, she would become delusional, she would run and hide, she'd hide under the bed. At
That
this point in
supports my
time,
theory
she
of
made her
she
way
was
up to the
hiding from
roof.
what was after her.
She
But it
climbed
still
the
doesn't
ladder.
explain the lid.
And if you actually zoom in on those particular dates, you'll see that they both say the 18th and not 15th and 18th.
Oh, I thought it said 15th.
One of the points that the Lamb family's attorney brought up was there was risk on the roof and that they really should have done more to stop the public from going up there.
Agree. There should be a cage, a locked cage
Our
on
legal
that
counsel
ladder on
confirmed
the
that we
outside of the
did take
building,
security
if that's how she got
precautions.
up there.
Outside of the risk of someone falling in, there's a big risk because that water could be contaminated by someone very easily.
Lock the
It is
lids.
so then how could Elisa have closed the lid on herself? The
I think the
employee that
maintenance
found her,
man.
his name is Santiago Lopez. He reports to the court that he climbs up on top of the tank and the hatch is open.
Okay. So that's explained
It's
now.
shocking to me.
I bet he put it back on just out of habit.
No one apologized to me. No one reached out to me.
Keyboard warrior.
We have to be more responsible to what we say and do.
Agreed.
It's worth like 80 something million now. It's wild.
Wow.
The new owner wants to have a bar area put up on the roof.
Put some high fences up. I didn't know Brian Grazer and Ron Howard were part of this. So that's cool to see. One critique I have about this, and it's a lot of the docuseries, this is a critique I have. This one's not as bad as some of the others, but they obviously went in the order of the conspiracy talk and the way that was going on because they presented the other facts just kind of in pieces. Not always even in the order that the facts were discovered, but to get us thinking along the lines of the conspiracy folks or why they were thinking the way they were thinking because, hey, that makes better TV. I do like the way they wound things up, though, with focusing back, and I'll get emotional saying this, but focusing on the positive of Elisa and the positive impact that she's had. So I think everything was explained except for exactly how she got onto the roof, which I think at this point we're assuming she climbed up by the ladder and got up. And if for safety reasons, for fire safety reasons, you can't put a cage on the ladder, which they do at fast food restaurants and all that. If you look at the ladders that go onto the roof there's always a cage on those. So I don't see why they couldn't on that. But if fire safety is a reason why they can't put a cage on the ladder, then they at least need to put locks on the tanks. I chuckled about having a high fence if they do the bar roof bar. I think that's the proper way to say it. I've been to Sky Bars and it's kind of nice and breezy. You're up above the traffic and everything, so it's kind of nice in that respect, especially at sunset or sunrise, or not sunrise, but sunset. So I could see as long as they put all the safety stuff into place, where that would be really nice. Definitely lock up those tanks though. I think my rant kind of summed up how I was feeling with most of it, just people jumping to conclusions. And you see it all the time in the news right now. In fact, with COVID, the big thing I see people getting upset about is the fact that people who are vaccinated are getting COVID. Well, yeah, they never said you couldn't. So it's a conspiracy theory because people who are vaccinated are still getting COVID. But they never said you wouldn't get COVID. They just said that the effects would be reduced. The chances of death would be reduced. The chances of being hospitalized would be reduced. And that has been proven. So when people only take partial cat hair, and because I'm all sweaty, it's sticking. People only taking part of the facts and not the whole facts drives me nuts. People going down these rabbit holes that have no They're off on a tangent. There's there's no connection with this conspiracy theory all the way down here to what's going on right here. And like I said, it's okay to question things and investigate it, but don't get consumed in it. And I was glad the one guy was able to look at himself in the reviews, looking back at his tape and seeing just how consumed he got in it. I still say the shadow that they saw as she was walking away from the elevator, I still say it was the heel of her shoe. I've done weird turns before when I'm standing in a place. And if she's in a psychotic episode, her walk may be even funnier when she's turning. So, the heel showing because the foot is on a pivot where the heel is out further, so it's going to get that little glimpse right there. That makes sense to me. It doesn't have to be anybody standing there. It's possible she climbed on the outside ladder and got up to the tanks, which somebody who's in a psychotic episode, that's really scary that they're in that state of mind and climbing on the side of a building, basically, with nothing, no protection around them. The one thing I think is still kind of vague, it's still up in the air, and that's because we weren't there with her, so we don't know, is why her clothes were off. As I said, when you're in a psychotic episode, who knows why you do some of the stuff you do. I think the officer's explanation is viable. Choose trying, because when the clothes get wet, they get heavy. So you take the clothes off, they're not quite as heavy, you can tread water longer. The question becomes, had they, and she must not have been making any noise when law enforcement were up on the roof. So I don't think she would have been alive still at that time. But if she heard the dogs and she heard law enforcement and heard people talking, maybe she stopped doing any movement. Maybe she was still alive and they could have saved her. I don't know. I don't know. It's a shame. The situation as a whole is a shame. It's a shame that people jump to conclusions and don't allow facts to be cycled through. It's great that web sleuths want to help, but it becomes a problem when they start focusing on things that aren't real, if that makes sense. So, at any rate, it was a good docuseries. I am now going to watch my friend's episode on YouTube. Hopefully you will watch it before you watch my reaction to that. And then that will wrap everything up for the Cecil Hotel. Thank you guys for joining me on this one. I'll see you on the next one. Bye.